Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something important, taking a deep dive into a really tragic event, the Air India flight AI-171 crash. June 12th, 2025. It's still very much unfolding. And it's a harrowing incident, a terrible loss of life, and we really acknowledge the weight of this. Our mission here for this deep dive is to sort of distill the crucial information, the main facts, the leading theories, how the investigation is progressing, all based on the source material we've gathered. The idea is to help you get up to speed quickly on what's quite a technical and obviously sensitive situation. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, and when you look at our sources, your ongoing reports, expert takes, initial findings, what really strikes you is how fast public attention zooms in on potential causes.
Yeah.
Often way before any official conclusions are even possible. So it's critical to remember no definite cause is confirmed yet. And what we'll do here is carefully explore the potential reasons the factors being investigated right now.
Absolutely. So to start untangling this, let's set the scene. We have Air India flight AI-171. It's a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. It was headed for London Gatwick, taking off from Ahmedabad, India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. Took off at 1:38 p.m. local time, that's 8:08 GMT. And what's really chilling is how immediate the distress was. A mayday call less than a minute after getting airborne. Then you have the visual evidence, CCTV, social media clips showing the plane just struggling to gain altitude, flying really low, nose pitched up, and crucially, the landing gear still down.
Still extended, yeah.
And the crash timeline is just grimly precise. It came down about 33 seconds after wheels up, just about 1.5 kilometers, less than a mile, from the runway it just left. So those first moments, the visual picture was already quite harrowing. What did that tell investigators initially?
Well, the impact itself was devastating. It crashed right into a residential area, specifically a medical college hostel, Meghaninagar area. Sources describe just a massive fireball. Imagine about 125,000 liters of jet fuel exploding. The scale of the loss, just immense. At least 279 people killed. That's 241 passengers and crew, plus at least 38 people on the ground. Medical students, doctors, relatives caught in this. And almost unbelievably, there was one survivor, Vish Washkumar Ramesh. He was in seat 11A near an emergency exit, managed to escape through a broken door. He's recovering now, burns and impact injuries.
Wow.
And the passengers, a mix of nationalities, 169 Indian, 53 British, 7 Portuguese, 1 Canadian. So if you connect the dots, that rapid deterioration in the crash site, it makes the investigation incredibly complex right from the get-go.
It really does. And that complexity points us straight to the core question. What are investigators looking at? You've got multiple international teams involved here. India's AIB, the US NTSB, the UK's AAIB, and Boeing, of course. And as always, the first big step is getting those black boxes. The flight data recorder, the FDR, found June 13th, and the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, on the 15th.
Crucial pieces.
Absolutely. They hold the key, right? System data, pilot actions, what was said in the cockpit. So with all this complexity, where did they even start? What are the main theories?
They start by looking hard at a few primary theories, matching them against what they know so far. One leading idea, though challenging, is dual engine failure, meaning both engines lost power simultaneously. Sean Preshnicki, he's a former pilot, pointed out the mayday call, no thrust and no lift, fits with that.
It does sound like it.
But, and this is a big but, dual engine failure is incredibly rare, like extraordinarily rare, especially on a modern jet like the 787. These planes have so many redundant systems. Think FADC, the full authority digital engine control, sophisticated computers managing everything.
Right. Designed to prevent exactly this.
Exactly. So for both to fail. Investigators aren't just looking for a simple glitch. They're looking for something unprecedented, maybe a cascade failure or some major external factor. You might think of the Hudson River incident back in '09.
Bird strike, yeah.
Right. But this Ahmedabad crash was much lower, no safe landing spot. Very different scenario. So under this engine failure theory, they're digging into things like fuel issues, contamination, starvation, maybe a clogged fuel metering system, or pure mechanical failure, corrosion, blade breaks, overheating, oil leaks, stuff like that. Though another pilot, Marco Chan, noted there's no obvious sign of a bird strike in the footage we have.
Okay, so if it wasn't birds.
It raises that big question. What could cause both engines on a highly reliable 787 to fail at the same time? It's a tough one.
It really is the central puzzle.
Okay.
Moving past the engines, what's another major theory?
Well, flap or slat misconfiguration.
Okay. Explain that a bit.
Those videos showing the plane struggling, nose up but going down, that screams insufficient lift. Flaps and slats, they extend from the wings during takeoff and landing. They change the wing shape, basically, give it more surface area, more curve.
To generate the lift needed at lower speeds.
Precisely. Critical for takeoff. So, investigators are asking, were they set correctly? Did they even deploy properly? Or was there a mechanical problem? Maybe an issue with the fly-by-wire system that controls them, the electronic controls.
Right, instead of old cables.
Yeah. And there's history here. The 1987 Northwest 255 crash in Michigan.
Yeah.
That was flaps and slats not set right.
Okay, so that's a definite line of inquiry.
Absolutely. And connected to that aerodynamic struggle is that observation about the landing gear being extended the whole time.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Why is that so significant?
Because it's very unusual. Gear normally comes up right after takeoff. Why? To reduce drag.
Makes sense.
Leaving it down massively increases drag. So if you already have problems with thrust or lift, that extra drag just makes everything worse. It could compound the issue severely.
So it's another piece suggesting a desperate fight for lift.
Exactly. Sean Krotchinski called it a deeply problematic sign. Maybe not the root cause itself, but a major factor. It suggests maybe the pilots didn't have time to retract it, or a system failed preventing retraction. It just adds to that picture of things going wrong very, very quickly. It's about seeing how these pieces connect.
Okay, so engine failure theory, flap slat theory, the landing gear adding drag. What about the pilots themselves? The human factor, cockpit dynamics, their actions.
Crucial. And that's where the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, comes in. Once they analyze that data, they'll hear the conversations. Any alarms were procedures followed under, immense pressure.
Are there past examples where this was key?
Oh, yes. Think of the LAPA crash in Buenos Aires, 1999. That involved issues with configuring systems, ignoring warnings. Tragic.
And the Mayday call from Captain Sabowell here.
Very significant. It tells us the pilots knew they had a critical emergency. They weren't unaware.
Right.
But the fact that there was nothing heard after that call, it suggests things deteriorate incredibly fast, just overwhelming.
Okay, beyond the cockpit actions at that moment, what about broader operational stuff?
Right. Things like training and maintenance, that's always part of a major investigation. Air India's records, how their pilots are trained, it's all under the microscope, especially since the airline, under Tata Group now, has been working on updating its fleet.
And regulators have stepped in too.
Yes, India's DGCA, their aviation authority, ordered safety checks on Air India's entire 787 fleet, looking at takeoff parameters, engine fuel systems, that kind of thing.
Is that directly linked to this crash?
Important point. They stress no direct link has been established yet. It's more of a precautionary measure for the whole fleet.
Okay. And the plane itself, the specific aircraft?
It was 11 years old, delivered back in January 2014, flew over 700 times in the last year. And this is, significantly, the first fatal crash for this Boeing 787-8 model.
Really? The first one?
Yes. It's been flying since 2011. Over 1,100 are out there globally, generally considered very reliable. Now, you might remember some whistleblower claims in 2024 about 787 manufacturing shortcuts.
I do recall something about that.
But again, vital to state, absolutely no link established between those claims and this specific incident.
Got it.
So it raises this interesting question, how do you balance these big fleet-wide checks with the intense focus needed for this specific crash investigation? The priority is finding the root cause here, while the checks aim for broader prevention.
That makes sense. It's a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
So where does the investigation stand right now, progress-wise?
Well, as you said, both black boxes recovered. That's huge. The FDR, the data recorder, was damaged, but they say it's usable. Data extraction is happening now.
And they expect initial findings soon.
Preliminary insights may be within days, they hope. That'll be the first real data dump.
And the international cooperation continues.
Absolutely. India's AAIB leads, but strong support from the US, NTSB, UK, AIB, Boeing, FAA. A big team effort.
And the timeline for full reports.
Pretty standard for something this complex, a preliminary report maybe within 3 months, but the final, detailed report, that could take 1 to 2 years. These things take time.
Okay, so black boxes are key. What else is helping them piece it together?
That video evidence we talked about is actually quite telling. There's a 59-second CCTV clip showing the takeoff, brief climb, then flying flat, then descending, gear down the whole time. But critically, what the video doesn't show is visible engine fire or smoke.
Ah, okay. So that leans away from certain types of catastrophic engine failure.
It potentially reduces the likelihood of failures that typically involve immediate fire, yes. It confirms the lack of thrust or lift visually, but without fire.
Right. And on a much more somber note, the identification process.
Yes, a grim task. Identifying victims is ongoing. They're using DNA matching because the fire caused severe burns, making visual ID very difficult. As of June 16th, they had matched 119 DNA samples and 76 bodies had been released to families.
Just heartbreaking.
It really is. And it shows you how investigators have to painstakingly combine all these different pieces. The tech data from the boxes, the visual evidence from videos, the forensic work. It all has to come together to build the full picture.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. We've got all these threads, these potential factors. When you start putting it all together, what picture begins to emerge? What does the evidence lean towards right now?
Well, the complexity is the first thing. It's likely, very likely, this resulted from a combination of factors, not just one single thing.
Right, the chain of events idea.
Exactly. Dual engine failure is still on the table, but that rarity factor, especially with the 787 systems, keeps raising questions. If it was dual engine failure, it probably involves some unique cascading sequence or a major external hit we don't know about yet.
And the other factors.
The extended gear, the potential flap slat issue, they strongly suggest that aerodynamic struggle, a desperate fight for lift. Was it pilot error in setting things up? Or a system malfunction preventing things from working? Right, that's key.
But the Mayday call complicates just blaming the pilots outright.
It does. It shows they knew something was critically wrong and were trying to communicate. It counters any idea of, say, complete unawareness or negligence.
Okay. Any other contributing factors?
Things like the high fuel load for a long flight, the hot weather in Ahmedabad. They might have made a bad situation slightly worse, maybe reduced performance margins a tiny bit, but it's highly unlikely they caused the crash on their own. More like exacerbating factors, perhaps.
And we should be cautious about social media rumors.
Absolutely. You see stuff online, like claims on X about electrical issues. Until the official investigators confirm anything, treat it with extreme skepticism.
So ultimately,
Ultimately, the real answers, the definitive sequence, will come from that deep dive into the black box data and the meticulous analysis of the wreckage itself. Connecting it to the bigger picture, it just underscores how aviation safety depends on understanding these incredibly intricate interactions. It's rarely just one isolated failure.
that's a really clear way to put it. Complex interplay of factors. So this investigation moved forward. There's obviously a huge hope for clear answers. This is the deadliest Indian air disaster in 3 decades. The stakes are high. The main focus seems to be dual engine failure, flap slat issues, and potential human factors or system malfunctions.
Those are the core areas, yes.
And this tragedy has already prompted those wider safety checks on Air India's 787s, that constant learning loop in aviation.
Right.
So for you, the listener, and for our understanding of air safety, what's the takeaway? What broader lesson might be here?
Well, I think this tragedy, as unique as its details will turn out to be, it does pose a really important question for us to think about. In this age of super advanced technology, incredible redundancy in aircraft systems, how do we keep learning effectively from these thankfully rare but catastrophic events? How do we use them to improve our collective grasp of risk, of resilience, especially in these complex systems where humans and machines work together? It's something worth pondering. And definitely keep an eye on official sources, India's AAIB, maybe the BBC, Reuters, for the final reports when they eventually come out.